Hello? Is this working? Is anybody there? Is anybody there? Is this working? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let me know. Well done. Thank you, Michael Bishop. Can you all hear me speaking? And does it sound crazy? Seems okay now, Gavin. I feel like it would be inappropriate to say I love you, but I feel that way right now. That might have been one of the most stressful moments, certainly of the last few days, apart from maybe when I heard our little one shout through from the living room yesterday, 2 days ago, at me, "Dada, come and see what I've drawn on the couch." This is up there with that. Although the drawing on the couch was actually reasonably fixable because it was one of these really easy to remove kind of water paints, which I scrubbed off. But yeah, I feel like messing up a live stream is deeply uncomfortable. Probably more so potentially for you, watching me just like frying in my own inadequacy, like some kind of trout in a frying pan, except the trout put the heat on and the trout put the oil in and the trout just willingly jumped in. Is that a good analogy? Okay, so it seems like there's 5 of you there. Okay, first part of the sound check seems to be a pass. I'm going to hit play on my computer. Hopefully you are going to hear music, not in a feedback loop, and also me talking, not in a feedback loop. In other words, hopefully it's going to work. So let's try this. Does this work? Does it work? Love some comments just to let me know this works so we can continue. I think it might be working, but I don't know for sure, so just go and be that person that types in and says yes. Is this working? Can you hear the music? Can you hear me? And can you hear both of those things with any level of clarity, unlike that debacle before? So yeah, do feel free just to let me know. Working perfectly. Okay, I'm going to stop the music there. Oh my goodness me. Okay. Thank you for your patience. It looks like from my little icon on the screen there that almost all of you came back. 3 people, it does seem, kind of went, yeah, I think I'm going to spend my Sunday evening doing something else. I feel like apologising straight away to all of you, but particularly George and Faye. That was like, this was supposed to be a really special thing, and you instead were faced with my technical ineptitude. George, the first time this happened was back in January when I first tried to do this, and it became one of those things that I laugh about and go, oh, that was so horrendous at the time, but it's a thing of the past now. Except roll on September when you're going to do hopefully a meaningful, touching tribute to some lovely folk who put their belief in you to write their music for their 50th wedding anniversary, and then it's going to go tits up again. I'm so sorry. Hopefully you're already laughing about this. I'll get there one day, with your blessing, George and Faye. Okay, I'll start again. 50 years. This is what I'm trying to say. 50 years of marriage. This was the occasion and reason for the piece of music that you've heard a little bit of there. And yeah, I was contacted by this lovely gentleman who I've not yet met in person, but I believe we are going to be meeting soon, George, who asked me to write a piece of music for him and his wife's 50th wedding anniversary, their golden wedding anniversary. And they're good pals, Gus and Senga, who are keen musicians, fiddle players, and guitar players, they had said, hey, Adam does tune commissions. So they'd said to George, get in touch with Adam. So that's what happened. And I'm going to just walk you through what happened from that day. I got the email. I sometimes have tunes that I've already written that I send out to people for tune commissions and say, you know, like, do you like this? And some folk say, no, I prefer you write something from scratch. But interestingly, some folk occasionally go, do you know what? I like that tune. I want that one. So I do sometimes do that, but I didn't have anything that said 50 years of marriage. I just didn't have anything in my Dropbox folder. So I had to do something deeply uncomfortable for me as a creative person and also as a human being. I had to deliberately write something, and I'd like to explain a bit about why I find that uncomfortable. It's because I sometimes have this notion that my best tunes are ones that have kind of happened in a spontaneous moment without me deliberately sitting down to try and write them. And I have this belief, which I'm starting to realize thanks to this commission, thanks to you, George, starting to realize is a core belief that is holding me back and may actually not even be based on fact. In other words, I have actually written tunes in the past where I have sat down to write and I haven't had any ideas, and I've had to like try and get my creative brain engaged. And I have written tunes from that place that I have later gone, I like that. So to start off with, I had nothing other than a sense of this has to be right. This obviously has to be right for George. It's got to be more than right. It's got to be, you know, it's 50 years. I can't even imagine. It's got to be so right from George's point of view. It's obviously got to be right from Faye's point of view. Like, it's unacceptable to have either of them even remotely unhappy about this tune. That's just unacceptable. Which is why, by the way, what I tend to say to people who are getting in touch with me to write tunes is that, you know, we don't actually go ahead with you actually commissioning me and, you know, sending pennies over until you've heard a tune that you like. So it's not like you're locked in, oh my goodness me, I said I would get this guy to write a tune and I don't like any of this horrendous stuff he's sending. That's just by the by. But I wanted to do a good job, and I was just kind of scared. I was just like, I don't want to try to write a tune in case it sounds like someone trying to write a tune. I mean, I could write a tune, I could write loads of tunes straight away, but sometimes I fear that they sound like, oh, it's trying too hard. It's not natural. So here's what I did to get myself into the headspace. I basically slightly scared myself, because sometimes fear is quite a good thing for my own creativity. I don't think I'm totally alone there, but a little bit of energy, like, whoa, this has to be right. And then I thought about, okay, so it's a wedding tune. What are the feelings that this has to do? Also, I want to get into writing music for film and TV one day, and this was the final thought that booted me across the line, which was, if you want to actually write music for film and television, you can't be sitting there one day going, oh, I don't want to try writing in case it sounds contrived. You're going to have, hopefully one day, a director saying, write this feeling, that feeling. So I just realized that I had to step up, and that got me going. Then I thought, okay, so what does the feel of this tune need to be? 50 years of marriage. It needs to be, I was just thinking about words, dignity. I thought, this has to be something which communicates a feeling of dignity. It has to be a dignified piece of music, and it just has to feel appropriate for that occasion. And then I started thinking about, okay, can I narrow it down into some kind of specifics? Like, is it going to be in a major key or a minor key? Shock horror, I chose a major key. Minor key was never really going to be on the table for composing a piece of music to celebrate 50 years of marriage. So I was like, okay, major key, dignity, more specifics. So I thought, what would be the tempo? And again, I kind of imagined it was for film and television. And I thought, well, I imagine a bride walking down the aisle. And I thought, what is the tempo? What speed does brides tend to walk down the aisle at? And I kind of came up with about that. And I was kind of imagining someone walking with good posture. I started with that. So I was like, okay, it's going to be something like that. And then I just went, okay, creative brain, major key, dignified, go. And the first two notes, or the first two big notes, are kind of just joining onto that pulse of walking down the aisle. Dum di di, dum da dum, ba dum ba da bee bum, ba dum ba da bee bum. So that's how I got started. The long note, ba dum ba da bee dum, and also just that dum dum. That's like raising a bit of excitement, and then kind of calming down again. It's almost like a bit like butterflies in the stomach. Okay, I think I'm actually now going to just play the track. It's pretty short. I'll play it now, and then I'll maybe just go into the nerdsville of everything. And yeah, so this is it. It's just I went straight in with the tune. Side note, sidebar. I think intros are a thing of the past. I love it when films just now start. Remember back in the day when films would start with like minutes of credits, and then suddenly at some point, maybe with James Bond or something, they're just like, no, let's just. People have sat there. They've sat down. Let's just start the film. Anyway, I noticed that happening a lot on a lot of modern music. It's just like, and I think that's an improvement personally. So straight into the tune, and it's twice round. Things evolve and change a little bit, but not too much. There's not a big fancy arrangement. It's twice through, and there's an outro which kind of just develops that central idea of dum da. So I'll stop talking, and I will play you George and Faye's Golden Wedding. Okay, here we go. Anytime now. So that's it. That's the piece. It's I think it's like 2 minutes 56 seconds. It didn't need a big fancy arrangement. Alright, so if you're interested, here are the elements. The tune. So this, in case you're unaware, this is a track, and this brown bit here is an audio file. Thank you, Gavin. And that's what my recording of my fiddle looked like. I think this was actually the second take. And oh, it looks like I may have done a little edit towards the end, but it's basically all one take. This is a different type of mic, my Neumann clip-on mic. This is the V67 mic, which is the mic I'm speaking into right now. And you can actually see that this is picking up my vocal. Hopefully that's not going to cause any chaos. Thank you, Michael. Thank you all. So this is me playing the tune. One of the things I did at first was I have to get chords for the tune. So I sat at the piano a few times and then sussed out, by playing the piano badly, some chords, and then I programmed them in as MIDI. MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And this here, Romantic Organ, this is my programmed MIDI. It looks this way just now, which tells you that it's muted, because once I'd gotten the programmed MIDI programmed, I then did this thing where you call bouncing to audio. In other words, it creates a new track, and rather than it being MIDI, it actually becomes an audio file. It's like, looks like this. I'll just zoom in. Looks like that. That's an audio file, in case you're unaware. I'm sure some of you are more than aware. And then up here is what it looks like when it's just like a series of binary code instructions. So I created this organ part, and one of the early mixes that I sent to George, because that's actually part of what I do, is I send the tracks kind of in progress, partly to reassure the commissioner the commissioner, to reassure them that that this is going well, but also to reassure me that they're happy. So the original mix had this church organ really high in the mix, and George, and I'm very grateful for this, George spoke his mind and said a little bit less of the church vibe, because we're not like the most religious people in the world. And I got a sense that might have even been possibly an understatement. So I toned back the organ sound a little bit, and what I mean by that is, I'm going to just show you some EQ here. So here's a boring little fact for you. I mean, it's not boring. The playing of the tune sits around here, and what I've done is I've turned down the volume of the frequencies where the tune sits, and that just means that your ear, as you're listening to it, isn't really having to decide what should I be focusing on. You can kind of hear the organ in the background, but the fiddle is uninterrupted and not having to fight. And one of the things that I love about a good mix, listening to my favourite artists, is that there's no doubt about what the artist or mixing engineer wants you to focus on. And I think mixes that annoy me, and I think probably would annoy anyone, are mixes where you're like, I'm not sure what you want me to focus on. So I wanted to leave people in no doubt, this is all about the tune. So all the other noises have to kind of just step aside for the tune. In the same way as the bride going down the aisle, no one's going to be like cutting her off or kind of pushing past her. It's all about her progress down the aisle. I wonder if I can actually do this thing right. I'm going to solo, which means you just hear this one track. I'm going to solo that and also solo the fiddle playing the tune. So hopefully you can kind of hear what I mean. And what I'll do is I'll turn off this EQ. I might have done two EQs. Oh, even more EQing. This is the church organ track. I've taken even more out, as well as rolling off a lot of the high end of the organ there. And yeah. Okay, so I'm going to just actually, what I'll do is I'll hit play, and then I will do this thing here. If you look over here, I can bypass all the effects plugins, and you should hopefully hear that when I click that to bypass the effects plugins, that suddenly the tune becomes a little bit muddy and caught up with the sound of the organ, and leads to you maybe going, I'm not sure what you want me to listen to here, Mr. Mixing person. So here we go, I'm going to hit play. So you can hear the organ and the church. Sorry, the organ and the fiddle. Here we go, I'm going to bypass all the effects plugins on the organ. I'm really hoping this doesn't sound better. So it's a subtle thing. Now I'm going to turn back on all the plugins. So the fiddle should just be sitting more nicely. I'll do it again. I'll bypass all the effects plugins on the organ. There's lots of things in the same frequency range as the fiddle. Doesn't sound bad, but it's just not as nice as... Now the fiddle is sitting in its own little pocket, uninterrupted. You can still hear the organ. That's my hope. My hope is that I've got this right. I am not some mixing engineer master. I'm pretty new to this. I've been doing this kind of thing for like 4 years. So I often think like, how good are you at an instrument after playing for 4 years? You're maybe not a complete beginner, but let's face it, you're not exactly going to be Pavarotti. So there you go. That's the organ, and that's the kind of chord progression that I took following the tune. The actual chords I did for the A part of the tune, the first part, I did a drone, which means that the lowest, there's just this low note that sits all the way through. So you can have a listen. Let's just listen to the organ without the tune actually. I'm going to do this thing now I like to do when I'm mixing, which is I filter off various things. So here we go. You've got this drone at the bottom. And you've got the other things above it. But it's all sitting over this drone. I'll bypass that. And in the B part of the tune, a little bit of movement. And this, I used to be a choir boy. For those of you who follow my channel regularly, you know that. And I love the rules that we were given. You're not allowed to have perfect fifths moving in parallel. That's two notes that are apart by an interval known as a fifth. If one note goes up, the other note doesn't go up at the same bit. It's clunky. So I tried to harmonize like that, essentially with individual parts. Okay, right, I'm just noticing there's a couple of questions in the chat. So, hey Gavin, is the EQ purely by ear, or are you consciously targeting certain frequencies? I am targeting certain frequencies. Here's my nerdy brain. I'm trying to learn the frequencies. So those first two notes of the tune, dum D, that's a G, and an E. I know that low G is 196 hertz, and I know that E I think is 330 hertz. Okay, so going back to the organ EQ again, here it is. Can I make this bigger? So my first note is right there, so that's where the removing of these frequencies on the organ sound starts. Dum da da, those two notes there. E is 330. Maybe I should have even had this a little bit more to the right. So to answer your question, it's a lot by ear, but also I know that that's where the tune is sitting. Whoop, whoa, good old undo. Why has it gone like that? What have I just done? Okay, that's great. I've just Ruined the EQ. What did I just do? More technical, incredible skills from me here. Shift Command Z. Oh, good old Shift Command Z. Shift Command Z again. Okay. Yeah, I'm just kind of now. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to just like ruin the mix live stream. That's my vibe. Here's my nice mix. Let's ruin it. I don't think I have ruined it. I hope it's okay. All right. So that's where it's sitting. I want to show you something else now on the organ channel. So this is another EQ, Fab Filter Pro Q3. So look what I did here, right? This is all the high frequencies. Look in here, 1000, 2000, 5000, 10,000. I rolled a lot of those off. And I think I'm going to take that off so you can hear what that does, right? So have a listen. Right, I'm going to turn off this. Hear how it's a lot brighter? Back on again. I've muted it just a wee bit. Why did I do that? Because of one of my favourite facts. The Fletcher-Munson curve, which is that human hearing is more sensitive to frequencies, I think over between 2000 and 5000 hertz, is it? Certainly above 1000. So in other words, if something is at like minus 18 decibels at 200 hertz and something else is at minus 18 decibels at 5000 hertz, you will perceive the 5000 hertz noise as being louder, even though it's not louder. And that's because I believe it's like an evolution thing. That's babies screaming these frequencies. We are more sensitive to those. We've evolved to be basically unable to ignore those frequencies. So as a mixing kind of technique, I roll off a lot of those frequencies in instruments that I don't want to be at the front of the mix. In other words, it's all about the storytelling. If I want someone to listen to this and focusing on the tune, and I have other instruments in the background that are blaring out these frequencies, then your ear is going to be going, whoa, what's that? What's that? Whereas if I roll them off gently, in this case, pretty gently, then your focus is turned to other instruments that do have those frequencies. In this case, the fiddle. Where's the fiddle track again? Here, so let's look at the. You'll see that I've got no. Oh, I do have some EQ in the fiddle. Oh yeah, I could go into that. There's some EQing going on there. I've tried to tame the higher frequencies in the fiddle, but basically the fiddle is occupying that zone, which means that the fiddle is going to be cutting through or not going to be interrupted. Trampoline frequencies, that's a good term, I like that. So there we go, that's a little bit about the organ and choosing an organ for churchy vibe, then kind of just rolling it back a bit at George's request, EQing it a bit so it doesn't get in the way of the tune, because we want the tune to be the centre, and hopefully not having it too quiet that it's out of the way. Okay, so now we have this bit here. This is the first B part. Up here you can see 1B, that's what it means. First time through the tune, B part. I've added a thing here that says Chelly BIP, that means bounce in place. So this was originally a MIDI file from a company called the Crow Hill Company. They do a thing called Glass Strings, and this is a recording of a cello, but such as the technology these days, you can actually put in some MIDI information and it accesses and pulls up an actual recording of a cellist. In this case, I think this may be Alice Allen, because she works for the Crow Hill Company, I believe. Also, can you hear the rain hammering down on my wee shed? I don't know if you can, but here's what the cello sounds like. So that sounds like a cello, right? What have I done here? Oh, so here's the EQ. Look here, I've taken out the same frequencies where the tune exists. Left in the bass frequencies. The tune's not in that area, so the cello's like free rein to fill out those bass sounds. There is some organ down there, but it's okay if those guys mix up a bit, I think. What's this? This is a boosting of frequencies in the zone, in the Fletcher-Munson curve zone. Why would I be boosting frequencies there after just saying I get rid of those? I think I felt that in order for the cello to be heard on an iPhone or any other small phone, I needed a little bit of high frequencies. And I felt like taking a bit of a risk in terms of letting the tune sit comfortably in that pocket there, boosting a bit of these high frequencies. These are kind of fuzzy frequencies. I'm actually going to show you what I mean. Oh, but then I've gone and taken them off again here. There you go. There's an example of my not great mixing. So I boosted them and then taken them off again. Wow. That's actually quite typical of me to be like that. Okay. And then we have an exciter. This is something which again boosts high frequencies. So technically speaking, I should have actually just not bothered boosting them there. I use my ears as well as just doing it this way. But you have that sound where I'm happy with that mix. And I'll put the tune in now to hear how they fit together. So the tune is uninterrupted, but you can hear a little bit of the cello. What happens if I turn this off from the cello? Doesn't sound great, does it? So what you've done there, cellos have this thing up high. It's like a fuzz. So there you go. And this is just following the bass line made by the organ. So that's hopefully mixed together nicely. And let's look at the mix on the whole, just with these two things soloed. So you can see this is the zone in the frequency spectrum that they're operating. That's the cello note there, I think. Or is it here? I don't know. Either way, these two things. So they provide this area of the frequency spectrum, I believe they say provides like warmth. If you have too much in here, it sounds muddy, I believe. Again, I am not claiming to be an expert, I am a student of this. But there's a happy medium in this area of frequency where it's not too muddy, not too overwhelming, but not too thin either. And it has to sound good on an iPhone. That's my attempt. Let me know if you, maybe there's some sound engineers watching this going, oh my goodness me, he's so naive. Let me know, because I am not an expert. I actually would love some constructive feedback. Okay, so now with everything going, got the tune, cello coming in now, and the romantic organ, and the tune just moving in a little bit of chord movement. Because the one thing I fear the most, and I think every composer should fear this the most, is the listener getting bored. You want to give them just enough familiarity that they feel a sense of where this is going, but you don't want them going bored. So the second half, I wanted to get a sense of progression. It's not got the drone at the bottom, the bass line's moving up, and then it returns to the A part again after this, which I'm going to allow to happen this time. And then chord 4, chord 5, and back to 1, boom. And now something else has to happen. It can't just be the A part again, exactly the same as it was last time. Something else has to happen. The tune isn't changing, the tune's just like, here we are again. So what I added was one of my favourite things to do, which is this, and I don't know why it's insisting on keeping. I don't know if you can hear that. If you're listening on an iPhone, you won't hear that. But this is what's called Serum Bass, bounce in place. So Serum is a synthesizer, which is no longer here. This is the audio from basically a really low note, which looks like this. That's doing over the A part of the tune what the organ was doing, what the cello was doing, but it's so much lower. Let's look at how much lower it is. It's all the way down there. It's sitting there at 30 hertz. Now, for reference, the human ear can't hear anything below 20 hertz. So this is very, very, very low. What is the purpose of that? Why do that? Apart from it just being insanely fun, it's like adds a solid foundation, and it's almost like you don't hear it as a note. It's more like a feeling. You feel it. Like if you've ever been near a massive waterfall, you don't hear a noise, like white noise, like you just get this feeling, and that's what it is. 20 hertz is 20 repetitions of anything per second, which is after 20 repetitions of anything, you start to hear it as noise. Below that, it's just like not that. Wow, what an explanation. So I thought, second time through, let's bring in the sine wave. A sine wave is a pure electronic sound. It's got no fancy overtones unless you add them by putting distortion on or whatever. And actually you can see here, it looks like I may have mucked around with that. This is a distortion kind of saturation plugin, which I ended up not using. As is this. This is another. What happens if I turn those on? Oh, it sounds bad, so that's why. Looks like I added 9.3 decibels of gain just to make it the right volume here. Okay, so that's what's happening second time through the tune. We're adding a sine wave. So let's just go back and listen to the romantic organ with the sine wave. And I'm going to just solo that bit of the frequency spectrum again, because I just love doing this. So that's what the bottom end sounds like. And we've got the cello as well. Filling it out. So you can see it just starts here, just fills out. Looks like there's a wee hole there. I hope that's not a mixing error. And then bringing in the high end. And I'll show you this fuzz I was talking about you can add for a cello. Around 5,000 hertz. Hear that kind of fuzz? That's a part of a cello sound. So I wanted to just create this wall of just solid sound from the lowest sounds we can hear all the way up high. I wanted to just create that and have the tune sitting in this pocket right here. I'll add the tune and see if I actually managed to do that. That's the bit of the frequency where the tunes sing. And you can hear that the tune does have other bass sounds in the background, but in that area of the frequency spectrum, the tune is the king. Which is why I think you can have other things higher. Tune's still king up there. The tune is kind of king in all the frequency ranges except the really low notes. We don't need the tune down there. It doesn't live down there. I'm going to bypass all of that. This track was mastered professionally, so I sent this mix to a professional mastering engineer, lovely chap called Andrea Gobbi, seriously talented, skilled guy who works in Glowworm Studios, and he mastered this, which basically means preparing it so that it's okay to play this track on any speakers. It's okay to play it on the radio. It comes in at the right volume. It's just packaged for public consumption in loads of ways, and it doesn't have anything that's going to maybe like destroy a speaker or have anything where you have to suddenly turn it down or turn it up. A lot of that responsibility is on the mix, in the mixing stage, that you give them something that doesn't mean they have to fix too much. And I asked him, I said, Andrea, can you make it so that this bottom sound, this sub bass, is as big and as fat as you can possibly reasonably make it before it starts to become like, wow, that's a bit much. And he, being the good sport that he is, obliged, and he sent me a mix that was like really bottom end heavy, or a master rather, that's very bottom end heavy, and said, I think this might be a bit much, but there you go. And then later on in the evening he messaged me and said, do you know what, I love it. So he was actually happy with it. So the final master, when you put it on speakers, if they're big enough speakers to handle these low frequencies, you can hear the fat sub bass, but hopefully not at the expense of the tune, and not in a way that makes you feel like it's getting in the way of the tune. It's just there as a kind of feeling, and hopefully it adds emotionally. I hope it adds I'm looking for something, just a solid foundation, something profound, arguably like, you know, a good wedding, 50 years of marriage, strong foundations. That's kind of what you get from this low thing, and that's what I hoped to get. I will let other folk judge how well I did it, but that's what I'm trying for. So this is the second time through the tune. That's the A part. Then we get to, oh wait, there's another element I haven't spoken about. It's the tune high here. Guess what that is? It's the tune high. So this is just me playing the tune up an octave. Looks like I've got a compressor on here. And that's, if you're not sure what compressor is doing, that's every time the volume gets above a certain level, that's it turning it down again, squashing the difference between loud and soft. So I think I felt that this line, I was worried about it being too pokey, worried about it distracting from the main tune, which is down an octave. And because this tune is higher up, it's in the area of the frequency that's harder to ignore. And so I think I had it really far back in the mix in terms of it's quite quiet compared to the main tune, right? Because I know that we will perceive higher frequencies as being louder. In fact, just out of interest, where is that sitting? Minus 30, minus 40 decibels, and the tune itself is a lot louder in terms of energy. I'm also realizing you can hear me breathing. Oops. Just finding noises I didn't know were in the mix. You can't hear those in the final mix. Wow, this is like way to feel self-conscious online. Yeah, so I kind of squashed the levels between quiet and loud and just put that in the background. It's also going to loads of reverb, and reverb makes it sound further away. And that's, I think, because the human ear, if you hear something in nature that's got an echo to it, that means it's far away from you because you're hearing the sound bouncing off all the stuff around you. Whereas if you hear something with no reverb in it, it kind of tells you that something's really close. So there's some reverb on the main melody, but not as much. It feels closer. And I've just noticed Gavin saying sounds like more reverb in the high tune too. Yeah, exactly. So it feels further away, because I don't want that to be distracting. I don't want that to be the main story. And my guiding principle for mixing is I don't want people in any doubt as to what I want them to focus on. As a listener, you can decide to focus on anything you want in a mix, and indeed it's fun to do so, to make an effort to listen to all sorts of wee noises, but that's your decision. It should be really clear, I think, really clear what the composer, mixer, producer, what they want you to focus on. My absolute heroes of this are Billie Eilish and Phineas. There's just no doubt in their mixes what they want you to focus on, which is more often than not obviously her singing. If you're not a fan or haven't listened to Billie Eilish and Phineas, I can't recommend them highly enough. Just phenomenally tasteful musicians. Alright, so we're getting there, we're nearly done. This is the second time through the A part, so we've added the sine wave, the bass, we've got a high harmony, we've got a little bit of development. So now we're coming up to the last time through the B part before our outro. So again, something has to change, something has to develop. And I added these things called pocket strings. This is another Crow Hill Company plugin. This is what it looks like when you open it up. Alright. What happens? Can I actually maybe just play this? Let me see if I what happens if I do this? Nothing. Cool. So I know why, because I've got it. What about it? It's very quiet. I'm actually going to turn off the automation for a second, and I won't even explain what that means just now. But in other words, I'm going to make it so you can hear this. Let's see. Let's turn up the volume. Alright. So I'll get a keyboard. Amazing. You can basically make these things sound really wild. And I'm going to stop that, and it's starting to feedback, which is slightly upsetting me. It stopped. Okay, turn on animation again. Right, here's what. What is that? High harmony won't stop. So this is the kind of towards the end of the piece. Something else needs to be added. You may think that notice that's really quiet. It is, because guess what? I don't want it to distract from the tune, but I do want it to be there, and I spent a long time adding this to the mix in a way that wasn't going to distract. And the thing was, I was really happy about these parts, right? I'll turn off the automation for a second so you can hear this a bit more loudly. These are just the harmony parts from the chords I wrote on the organ up several octaves. Let's see where they're sitting. Way up there. So right in that zone where they grab your ear. So I turned them down quite quietly. And it's that way. I remember learning about this from Phineas, from Billie Eilish and Phineas, that I think it's one of the things that anyone learning how to mix and compose comes up against, where you fall in love with a little part that you wrote and you want everyone to hear it, but then it gets in the way of like the main thing, and so you have to kind of like accept that some people, maybe most people, will actually never really consciously notice that part, which means They're never going to get to appreciate how beautiful these lines are that you think are beautiful. And you have to just accept that, and just accept though that it is going to kind of seep into their hopeful enjoyment of the track. And I'll show you what I mean, right? So I'm going to just like hit play from this second time to the B part, and I'm going to mute these strings, and I'll chuck them in, and hopefully you can just kind of see that they just add a tiny little bit of subtle icing on the cake. I spent a long time trying to get the volume of this correct. So that's it, everything in before. It just needs this extra thing. So I'm going to hit play again, unmute the pocket strings, and see what you think. Did this make it just a little bit more interesting? So just very subtly there. You don't really notice them, hopefully, but they add something, and then they get quieter here towards the end. Okay, and the reason that I got them quieter here, just in case you're wondering what this is, this line here, that's the volume. That's them getting turned up over the course of this B part, and just towards the end you can see they get turned down. Why did I turn them down just at the end of this B part? Because I felt like I wanted to transition into the outro phrase in a pleasing way, rather than just having these guys going full blast at the end and suddenly stopping. I thought we'll just phase them out gently, and it hopefully has the effect of kind of like, you know, that race where you pass the baton. It's like they're by fading out, they pass the baton onto the outro phrase. They just take us into the outro phrase in a kind of nice way. It's just a nice mood change. So have a listen to this. We're going to just play it from there halfway through, and just you'll hear how they get quieter, and then the outro starts, and it seems appropriate that they're no longer there. So just about to start fading out. And now the outro. And final new additions. Just developing the opening statement. There's a wee harmony fiddle coming in. And then finally the last chord with a swell in volume, and an out. So the outro, I added just a wee harmony part. Again, the harmony part's further back, and this wee note coming up. That was fun. And then it's the home straight, last note, slight increase in volume. Just gonna listen to this a few times. And you can hear you've got everything going now. You've got the sub down there, filling out the bottom. Getting this swell was tricky. Did I put any compression on this? Oh, just a bit. The outro strings, no compression. In other words, I let this note shape be quite dynamic. Quite a big difference in volume there. You see lots of folk on YouTube talking about compression and how much to use, how much to not use, blah blah blah. I'm starting to learn that you shouldn't just immediately compress things, or in other words, just immediately just automatically slap compressors on things and start making the loud bits less loud just because that's what you've seen on YouTube. You should be thinking, well, what does this storytelling need? And maybe it doesn't need to be turned down. So here I've put no compression. That's just, sounds pretty weird on its own, doesn't it? All my EQing. Again, lots of reverb, quite far back. I don't mind that those fiddles sound a bit strange because they're kind of, they don't sound too strange when it's like with everything. If I compressed it, that note would not have had so much, wouldn't have been so much fun. That's like, whoa! And that is the end of the track. It's amazing how quickly a short piece of music, how many millions of things end up being in it. And maybe they don't need to be in it. And again, I'm a learner, I'm just feeling my way here, but that's what I put in. So this is it. This is George and Faye's Golden Wedding tune commission, going from kind of a little bit of terror about not getting this right to something that I feel like George and Faye like it. I've just noticed George has put George is here. Hey George. George has put a comment. Thank you, George. It's glad you sorted out the gremlins and fascinating how you set about the composition. Thank you so much for your understanding, because you know I wouldn't have blamed you if you were a little bit like WTF. I emailed George today saying, yo, I'm going to be doing a wee live stream about your commission, and then yeah, I'm so mortified with how badly that went straight away. But thank you for sticking around. I'm going to chuck this tune towards some radio stations, Radio Scotland. Hopefully they will play it. And if you like it, you can go to my SoundCloud page. I should probably put a link somewhere in the comments for that and have a listen. There's some other pieces of music, other commissions that I've been doing, and you can hear that my progress as an engineer has hopefully come on a wee bit, but definitely when I first started out, there's like some things I'm like, oh my goodness me, I wouldn't do that now. But that's part of the, it's almost like that's part of what happens when you're like doing your artistic journey, that you look back and go, oh, I wouldn't do that now. There's a lovely quote from the late Martin Bennett about this, which was something along the lines of, what do you think, he was asked, what do you think about your earlier work? And he said, yeah, I wouldn't do that now, but I don't hate it. That's my story. That's where I was at. And I love that I think it's quite a common thing for artists to kind of look back on their old stuff and go, oh God, oh no. But I actually think that's really silly. It's like, yeah, you wouldn't do it that way now, but that was your journey. In a way, I hope that future me looks back on this and goes, oh, I wouldn't do that now. Not because I think this is bad. I think, well, I'm happy with this, but just because that means you've moved on, hopefully. A couple more comments. Hey Gavin, very effective. Thank you very much. Always very supportive. Thank you. You've been reading the ECM recordings. Go easy on the compression too. I feel like I should know what ECM stands for. Or do you mean the EDM, electronic dance music? Electronic Kaylee music? Let me know in the comments if I've gotten that right. But yeah, so I want to thank you, George, for allowing me to do what I love the most these days, which is to write music, and increasingly to write music in this way and to craft it. And you've made it possible for me to grow as a musician as a result of this, because it's like anything else. If you want to know how to drive a car, who do you trust more to drive a car? Someone who's watched YouTube videos about how to drive, or someone who's been driving for 10 years? So there's nothing quite like doing something to get a wee bit better at it, and I want to get better at this. So I just feel so grateful, for lots of reasons. Just feel really grateful, and also really grateful to all the supporters, my Patreon supporters, Gavin and Michael. You guys are like always here, and I'm so grateful to you all. Grateful to all my supporters, and also just grateful to people who are just tuning in out with Patreon, and maybe you're just watching this for the first time. I just feel really grateful. Let me know in the comments of anything you would like maybe me to do in the future. Yeah. Oh, I see, Gavin, you reply to my earlier comment about ECM record label that has Arvo Part, Steve Reich, okay, and lots of jazz stuff. Yeah, I can imagine that jazz and experimental music, you're not going to want the differences between loud and soft to be squashed, which, just in case you're unaware, that's what compression does. The loud's less loud, the quiet's less quiet, and that's a whole conversation, the compression conversation. So thank you all for tuning in. Yeah, I just feel grateful. I think I'm just going to finish by just playing the track from the start and thanking George once again, and thanks all my Patreon crew. Come and see me on Patreon if you want. I share lots of my new music well before the stage that you've heard tonight. I share that with a really lovely bunch of humans from all over the world, actually, and we have a nice little time over there, so any support there is appreciated. But equally, if you're just tuning in and enjoying it from home, that's also really awesome. Thank you very much. So yeah, for me, Adam Sutherland here, Ergy Music from a shed somewhere in Scotland. Thank you for being with me this evening, and yeah, I will wish you a good night, and I will finish off by playing George and Faye's Golden Wedding one more time. Okay, here we go. Why is it not playing? Oh, that's funny. Oh.